What's cracking YouTube, Neck Punch here, and have you ever noticed that some Pokemon look related? And I'm not just talking about evolutionary families, but just like animals in our world share common ancestors, it follows that Pokemon might as well, right? I mean, we need something to justify the existence of 3 different water-type turtle lines.
Or how about the 3 grass and 3 fire-type simian evolutionary lines? Hey everyone, it's DeadBedSpread, and today we return to Monkey.
Last year, I made a video about a potential common ancestor to all sauropod Pokemon, and in the process accidentally designed my favorite Fakemon I've ever done. So last year, when DeadBedSpread and I were kicking around ideas for our next art challenge, this concept inevitably came up. Look, it's not the first time I've suspected Game Freak is listening in on my conversations, lest we forget I designed Mega Blastoise back in the 90s. Anyway, some might say designing common ancestors is just a fancy way of saying Pokemon fusion. And to those people, I say, shut up, it's different. I'd be wrong, it is the same, but, you know, in an interesting way.
Speaking of interesting ways that Pokemon fusion could be introduced into the franchise, Neck Punch and I take a look at how crossbreeding might work over on my channel. If you followed me over from there, then welcome, and if not, be sure to check it out afterwards.
We went ahead and grouped all the non-legendary Pokemon according to potential common ancestors, in a sort of Microsoft Word discount version of Birdkeeper Toby's poster, and each of us picked 3 potential common ancestors to draw. We limited it to non-legendaries, since it's reasonable to assume that legendary Pokemon might have evolved differently, or, in some cases, actually are the common ancestor. So we're operating a few branches down, or out. I don't know exactly how trees work. I mean, I do, but it's just in this case how it's termed. Kicking it off with Batalorix, the common ancestor to all mole, shrew, and hedgehog Pokemon, or at least the ones we know about as of Generation 8. I know Sandslash is part pangolin, but shh, he's also a mole and a shrew. The name Batalorix comes from Battalion and Galarix, a prehistoric genus of moonrat, which, as it turns out, is a creature pretty closely related to moles, shrews, and hedgehogs. I tried to make Batalorix look like a moonrat, but like a big prehistoric behemoth one, though I don't think much of that comes through other than the teeth. They had teeth. You can also make the case that Togedemaru would have evolved with all other Pikachu clones. To that I say, 1, convergent evolution is a thing, and 2, I barely included Togedemaru in the end. I mean, I barely included Diglett in the end either, but that's because during the process I realized that Diglett really doesn't have any features. In fact, its whole thing is kind of its lack of features. Maybe I just included a lot of what's beneath the surface of a Diglett. I tried to do these guys a little bit more justice in the pre-evolution, which is as yet unnamed. Let me know in the comments what you think it should be called. Now, it's thought that as the world changed, this big grass ground type was forced to develop stronger claws, ultimately becoming a steel type. In some areas, they shed their leaves and grass typing, adapting to a life of digging underground as a ground steel type, and in forests, they used their claws to fell trees and their thick hides to defend as grass steel types, and then ultimately would become electric steel or grass fighting.
I imagine that this guy would have used its big claws to dig up all sorts of bugs to eat. To be frank, bugs are pretty nuts. They come in a staggering range of shapes and sizes, all evolving different niches in order to thrive and survive. A case could be made that all arthropod Pokemon share a common ancestor, however for our sake, and sanity, we group them all into categories, including dragonflies, bees, moths, and for my choice, beetles. As of Generation 8, we determined that there were 8 species of known Pokemon that could be classed as beetles, all of which may have derived from Ornithal, a colossal prehistoric bug fighting type juggernaut. You ever see how big insects used to be when dinosaurs roamed the earth? I mean, if Pinsir is 4'11" in modern day, you can bet that it has a giant ancestor. Insects in Japan are traditionally appreciated, so it felt important to me that Ornithal was as noble as it was intimidating. It also has the ability to radiate light, as well as packing a hefty punch. As time progressed and creatures became smaller, this big bug would diverge in 2 separate directions. One species would focus primarily on maintaining their magnificent horns, eventually evolving into the species that we know today as Pinsir, Heracross, Carablast, and Vikavolt, while the other variation would lose their horns, instead focusing on their shells and bioluminescent properties, thus becoming Ledian, Volbeat, Illumise, and Orbeetle.
I love that you accidentally designed something that looks straight out of Beetleborgs. Partly because I enjoyed the show, and partly because I'm pretty sure it was based on Power Rangers, which Ledian is also based on, so it's kind of perfect. I had my own idea for a big prehistoric bug type, but we'll get to that. First, I want to look at frog and toad Pokemon. There's so many of them hopping all over the Pokemon world, it's almost biblical. And they have to all come from somewhere, right? There's a few different theories as to how these might have evolved. Is there a common Frogmon and a common Toadmon, who in turn share one common ancestor? Or do all the water types share one ancestor, the poison types another? Well, whatever path you take, I reckon you're eventually finding your way back up the tree to Amphibious. Based on prevalence, I went with water poison for this big boy, imagining that it split into the water ground ancestor of Greninja, Seismitoad, and Politoed, and elsewhere gave rise to a poison fighting ancestor of Toxicroak and Venusaur. But maybe Venusaur peeled off first after it got a seed stuck in one of its big toxic warts. Maybe it got leech seeded by a Vileplume and never got the thing out. So yeah, it's Venusaur but with Seismitoad warts where a flower should be, and additional warts where Greninja wears its whatever those are. The head shape and throat are closest to Toxicroak, and the toes are all Politoed. The Polyline sadly didn't get as much of a look in as I initially planned, so I tried to add a few little swirls, and I also did this. Tadpox, a delightfully swirly frog spawn pre-evo. That was harder to say than I expected. The big guy has definite inspiration from the Beelzebuffo, but mostly it's just what I imagine happens when you replace a Pokemon's defining feature with gigantic warts. Art.
It's about time we got a frog spawn mon. You're right, and you can't spell wart without art. What is the deal with fox Pokemon being devious, crafty, malicious little bastards? A few Pokemon come to mind when you think of foxes, but one might surprise you as being included in this group. The Abra line. The whole line is fox influences with their ties to magic, and if you need further convincing, just look at Kadabra's tail. I decided that for this ancestor, we needed to go full spirit mode, leaning into the mystical powers associated with all of the fox Pokemon that we know today. The fire dark type Trixine would have been one of the smartest Pokemon of its time, avoiding humanity and learning to harness its spirit flame by using various tools. Mainly sticks, because, you know, they're flammable. Maybe cavemen learned to light their own fires by observing this ancient Pokemon. Heck, maybe it passed on this technique to what would eventually become Alolan Marowak. As the years went by, Trixine would evolve to fit new niches. Some became mischievous mountain-dwelling illusionists that would eventually become the Vulpix and Zorua lines. The rest became mustached weapon wielders, descending into Delphox, Thievul, and Alakazam. What? Spoons are weapons, right?
Absolutely. Did I ever tell you about the action ninja film I made in high school where they use spoons instead of knives? Curved blades? Okay, carry on.
For my final choice, it was a tough one. Doing an ancestor for bats seemed like a great option, but the scorpions were also speaking to me. I mean, have you ever really thought about Gligar and Gliscor? What the heck are they? Apparently they might be based off the scorpion fly, but that's an insect. It's not literally a flying scorpion. Wait a minute, a flying scorpion? Hang on. I merged the two. What is Gligar if not the perfect missing link? Sure, bats and scorpions have no evolutionary history in our real world, but remember, this is Pokemon. A fish can evolve into an octopus, a tiny man can evolve into a spinning top. It doesn't seem so ludicrous anymore, does it? This is Sarachnid, a flying poison-type ancient predator that soared through the air before swooping in and decimating their opponents. They didn't do too well on the ground, however, due to not having any proper legs. Its appendages were for grappling prey, not for taking an afternoon stroll. It's theorized that over the generations, it split off into two creatures, one of which developed feet, losing the scorpion aspects, and diverging into the Zubat, Woobat, and Noibat lines. Wow, really? The three bat Pokemon all literally just have the word bat in their name? Yikes. The other, instead of attaining feet, acquired multiple claw legs, allowing it to scurry about, cling to walls, but ultimately lose its ability to fly. It's still an adept glider though. It would become Skorupi and Gligar, the latter of which it shares its tongue with, which also acts as a fun homage to the Generation 1 sprite of Golbat. Oh, how time flies.
How far we've come. Now, DeadBedSpread, you've made an interesting point. There are plenty of Pokemon who look related phenotypically, yet their real-world counterparts aren't related at all. And that gave me an idea, because I've wanted to design the prehistoric ancestor of Genesect for a long time. And there's a lot of speculation as to which canon Pokemon Genesect could have been based on, including Kabutops, Scyther, Golisopod, and even Paris, with good arguments for each. But what if it wasn't any of them? What if it was all of them? Let me introduce Venisect, from venesection and insect, and also, unashamedly, genesect. Of course, mantises, trilobites, isopods, and cicadas? They aren't the most closely related creatures in our world, but we've all been aware of the similarities between Scyther and Kabutops since Gen 1, and these Pokemon all do share traits, with Genesect potentially tying them all together. The truth is, they aren't a Mantis, a Trilobite, an Isopod, and a Cicada. They're a Scyther, a Kabutops, a Golisopod, and a Paris. And a Genesect. They're fictional creatures with fictional rules. So for the common ancestor, I combined features from each of these mons with mosquitoes, maybe the most famously prehistoric bug, and the concept of venipuncture, which is basically what mosquitoes do. The baby form, Phlebottle, from phlebotomy and bottle, is based on a mosquito larvae and a blood tube, and its evolution, Venikito, from venikit and mosquito, is based on a mosquito and a particular needle for venipuncture called a butterfly needle. I know mosquitoes aren't butterflies, but I wasn't gonna make my blood-sucking bug type a butterfly when mosquitoes exist, right? So in prehistoric times, Venisect traveled in packs, hunting prey and sucking them dry, adding to the store on their backs. The more airborne Venikito would feed off that store, also carrying some in their abdomens to their young Phlebottle, who waited in stagnant swamps until they were strong enough to evolve. When Team Plasma found a fossilized Venisect, they didn't recognize the feeding tube in their backs and didn't know what it was for, so they did what any self-respecting scientists would do and put a gun there. It's possible I enjoy these ancestor mons a little too much, and I thoroughly enjoyed exploring the possibilities and bringing some to life with DeadBedSpread, so thank you so much for joining me, my dude.
Thank you for having me. As mentioned though, we do have more to show you.
Of course, as fun as it is to speculate about the past, the possibilities in the future are even more bananas. So make sure you visit DeadBedSpread's channel to check out the other half of our challenge as we explore the ins and outs of Pokemon breeding. That might have been a poor choice of words.
Skitty! Warlord, no!
Which group of Pokemon needs its common ancestor revealed next? Let me know down below. And until next time, my name is Neck Punch. Have a good one.